Welcome, everybody. This is Jan Rutherford with Self-Reliant Leadership, and this webinar is on adaptability. It's number 5 in a series that we do on a quarterly basis, and I promise it to be only 20 minutes. And by the title, you can see it's on adaptability, and it's the quality of being able to adjust to new conditions or the capacity of oneself to be modified for a newer use or purpose. And we know we're all a work in progress, of course. So a few years ago, we were out on a glacier and we're trucking along and making pretty good progress. And all of a sudden we get to a crevasse, and we had different people in charge, and we said, okay, we've got to get across this. So what do we do? Well, what happened is stress and fear kicked in. The stress resulted in people being very indecisive. The fear also was, hey, if we fall in here, it is not going to be a good outcome. What ended up happening is the group split into two without any communication at all. One group was trying to figure out, could we jump across this? No, absolutely not. And the other group was trying to figure out, is there a narrower place to cross? They didn't communicate, so one group didn't know when the other group was coming back. And what we found is if you went down the stream of this glacier about 200-300 meters, it ended. It went right into a big hole called a moulin into the pits of the glacier. And then you just simply walk across. It vanished. But what happened is we were not very adaptable in that setting. And part of the reason was because the two elements was stress. Hey, I'm in charge, I've got to make decisions. And in some cases there was no decision, or there was a poor decision and no communication. And then there's the fear. And some of it was irrational. I mean, you look at that and you're thinking, nobody could jump across that safely, with a 50-pound pack on. So it really does go back to these 3 pillars that I've talked about quite often. And those 3 pillars are ownership. We want people to take ownership of being adaptable. We want the teams to be accountable for that adaptability. And of course, we want alignment throughout the organization when it comes to that adaptability. And these 3 pillars really are about leading yourself, leading others, and leading the organization. And what we're really trying to do here is cultivate grit in other people. The ability to persevere despite stress or fear. We want to foster a sense of duty to each other so that people communicate effectively. And lastly, we have to set the pace, which really is all about the direction. And it is one of the things that we ultimately can control. So we're looking at cultivating grit, which is really about character. We're looking at fostering a sense of duty, which is about coaching people. And we're looking at setting pace and hopefully making good choices or good decisions. So let's look at each of those real quickly. If we look at leading self, this whole idea of adaptability, part of it is being really resourceful. And I mentioned character before, and there's really 6 virtues that really define what character is all about, and these have been around for a millennium. And of these 6, there's really 2 that really stand out when it comes to adaptability. One is wisdom, and the other one is temperance. Now, wisdom really is the quality of having experience, knowledge, and good judgment. The transcendence is really about being purposeful. But if we get back to temperance, it's a reliable ability to judge and decide with soundness, prudence, and intelligence. So if we say to ourselves, hey, I have a personal responsibility from an adaptability perspective to exercise good judgment, temperance, discipline, and have the knowledge, the competence, the wisdom, that's something that I can own. As we know, mastering others is strength, but mastering yourself is true power. So if we take the second pillar, which is leading others, we can dig into it a little bit. And The pun is absolutely intended. And here's a picture of two bears, and obviously they're highly adaptable. These are bears in Alaska. They're digging for clams on the beach. Less than 2 miles away, the grizzly bears don't even know how to dig on the beach. They have a totally different way that they survive. These bears, obviously super adaptable. When it gets really cold, they hibernate. So what can we learn from the bears and nature in general is most organisms are really highly adaptable. And what we're looking for in as far as others in really trying to foster behaviors is people that experiment. Well, if we're going to foster experimentation in our organizations, it has to be okay to fail. And when we look at our systems and our incentives and our people and the way we recruit, do we allow for people to experiment? Or is all about time, come in on time, under budget? It's all about billable hours. Do we allow for that? The second thing is looking at challenges as opportunities rather than, how are we ever going to get across this crevasse? Hey, I bet if we go downstream, I bet it goes into a moulin like a lot of the streams that we've seen on this glacier. The third is being resourceful. Of course, we always have to do more with less. There's never enough time, talent, or treasure. So are we able to see outside the box? It might go without saying, we want, when it comes to adaptability, people to be proactive. And we want them to be positive and curious and have a vision for what could be. But the big thing is to be open to new ideas. And the last part is really about taking ownership. And that comes back to that personal responsibility. And as a leader, we need to foster that in others. We need to cultivate what we would consider an environment where there's shared accountability, that people aren't just working with each other, they're actually working for each other. So this really leads us into the third pillar, which is leading the organization, which is keeping an organization focused. Of course, we need operational discipline, but we need adaptability, creativity, innovation for us to basically move the organization forward. Now, there is something that's called action logic, and it really is about how you interpret the environment and react, especially when your power, or safety is challenged. Now, I'm not going to cover all 7 different transformations of leaders. I'm going to cover a few of them. The first one is the diplomat. So the diplomat is someone that avoids conflict and seeks to please. A really great role, except when you're in a senior leadership position and your job is to really create an adaptable organization. The next role is the expert. And this is the one we see most common. These are the people that are most likely to get promoted. They seek rational efficiency. They control by perfecting their knowledge. They're great individual contributors. But they necessarily they're a common refrain from these folks are, it's my way or the highway. So not necessarily super adaptable. Then we have the achievers, really great about action and goal oriented, but oftentimes they don't think outside the box. They tend to follow the rules. And then we have the strategist. These are people that are really adept at mutual inquiry, vigilance, vulnerability. They're really great at creating shared visions, at bringing people on board. And this is really where most of us should aim to be as far as creating an adaptable team or an adaptable organization. And lastly, there's the unicorn called the alchemist. And these are people that are capable of social transformations. They are constantly renewing and reinventing themselves and others around them. They create symbols or metaphors that speak to hearts and minds. So what we can learn from all this is that what we need to do to create an adaptable organization is to create projects, teams, networks, and alliances for collaborative inquiry. And what I mean by collaborative inquiry is that when you realize, gosh, I don't know some things, and I know the group doesn't know. So the only way that we're going to figure something out is through collaborative inquiry, that we've got to really challenge each other. We've got to figure out what the best questions are. We've got to figure out hypotheses and test them, and to really question our assumptions when it comes to cause and effect. So one of the opportunities we had recently was to interview Admiral Mike Rogers. He's a 4-star admiral, recently retired as a former director of the National Security Agency, NSA, and commander of U.S. Cyber Command. If you think there's a parallel between that creative and innovative and adaptability, because that's a word that we hear so much from the military folks and so much in the business world, even more than being creative and innovative is being adaptable, because we all know from our military training, no plan survives first contact enemy. So what are your thoughts on that?
So first, it's funny. This was a big topic of discussion for us at the National Security Agency when, during my tenure as the director, I and the team put the organization through the greatest restructuring, the greatest set of changes that it had in about 20 years. It had been a little bit before 9/11 when General Hayden was the director. Last time we kind of restructured. And I just thought the world around us is really changing. We have got to build and create both a structure, but also more importantly to be an ethos and processes that facilitate the idea of innovation and adaptability.
So interesting, and you think about the NSA as an example of an organization that needs to be highly adaptable. We know just from the news, whether it be national security or our own individual cybersecurity, that the hackers are constantly adapting quickly. So some interesting insights from Admiral Rogers. Many of the top leaders that I meet want their managers to take risks. And when I ask, is it okay to fail here? You can hear a pin drop. They say, it depends. Then I ask, do the managers know the rules? Do they know what the expectations are with regard to authority, process, criteria? The same leaders want managers who can do more with less, but there will never be enough time, talent, or treasure. Being resourceful requires really a blend of courage and commitment. To quote Tom Peters, who wrote the book In Search of Excellence, he said that leaders need to be the masters of bounce back ability. And that is turning adversity, using adversity as an anvil by which virtues, those character traits, are forged into behaviors of the organization. I believe that self-reliant leaders take risks. They use limited resources to accomplish heroic aspirations. They also fail and learn and demonstrate remarkable inner and outer resilience to inspire people to be adaptable, to do more than they thought they could. With great self-regulation, they simply lead. So with that, I want to conclude and entertain any questions that you might have, either through chat or if that would probably be the best way. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to take those right now. And if there are no questions, I would refer you to selfreliantleadership.com. We've got lots of resources there. We'll be posting this video out there along with others that we have done. And I'd also refer you to our courses on LinkedIn Learning, Managing in Difficult Times, Managing Temporary and Contract Employees, Leading the Organization, a monthly series. And one we're recording this summer will be on grit. And we'll be recording that out in the wilderness of the Western Colorado mountains. Well, again, thank you all. And again, I'll be interested in any thoughts that you may have on the science and art of adaptability.